So I apologize ahead of time. I'm a bit of a wanderer when I speak. It is a true honor to have me here, to be here with you all. My goal here is to tell my story, but to also tell you about VEO and why I became so dedicated to that organization and to this man sitting up here in front. I'll start though with any good speaker. Sometimes it's helpful if you understand their roots. And I thought I'd start there with you all and tell you where I come from. I come from this little small town, and it's on the western edge of Virginia. And for those of us from that part of the world, we think there is a huge difference between Western Virginia and West Virginia. So for those of you who know the difference, please tell those who don't. But what you're seeing here is two pictures from near my parents' property. My parents today still live in the house I was born in. And my seed, the seed that started in my belly, the seed to serve, started right here in the Shenandoah Valley. Because where I grew up, you develop some really unique skills. And I met my husband, who, by the way, Army guy. I don't hold that against any of y'all. We were on the way home, and it was his first time to meet my parents. And he grew up out west in San Francisco. His mom still lives in Palo Alto. So for those of you who know, very different part of this country. We were driving up. We had just left 81, and we're wiggling through the back roads to get to my parents' house. And I said, "Oh, honey, it's the beginning of spring. Let's roll down the windows." And he said, "Okay." So we did that. And I said, "Oh, just take that in." Oh, I said, "Gosh, that smells so good." And he's sitting over there in the passenger seat, because of course I'm driving. That's just kind of the girl I am. And he's like, "Honey," he said, "that just smells awful." And I said, "No way, it does not. That's cow. That smells amazing." I said, "What smells awful is chicken or turkey or pig." And he looked at me and he said, "Are you kidding me? You can tell the difference?" I said, "Not only can I tell the difference, I can tell you if it's solid, I can tell you if it's liquid, I can tell you if it's mixed. I think it's fair to say, standing before you, I know my stuff." Can I get an amen? So for those of you who grew up farming in farm country, you know where I'm coming from. And when you grow up like I grew up, as a teenager, you have one goal: to get out of that town. And I said to my father, we had no money. I said, "Daddy, I want to go in the military." I said, "It's going to be my ticket out." And he said, "Well, dear," he said, my dad was in the United States Navy. He was a boiler tender on a big old tanker. He helped clean up oil spills in the Mediterranean right at the end of Korea. And he said, "You got to be an officer." All right, whatever that means, I'm fine. Because that seed to serve within my belly, let me tell you how my day went. I'd go to school. I'd get done with school for the day. You'd go home and help with harvest. So some of my best friends at school, the boys, they'd all wear chaps to school. Us girls would go, and for those who haven't baled hay in your life, oh Lord, I hope I never do it again. But you'd go home and the girls would help. A lot of times they'd sling the bales to you. We were up on the wagons and we just slide the bales down. I always wanted to get strong enough to be a slinger, and I probably did slinging 2-3 times in my life. But you'd go home and you'd help with harvest. You'd come back to school for basketball practice, right? 1 or 2 of us could drive. You'd get back to school. You'd do practice for a couple hours. You'd go home. You'd have dinner together, because that's what you did, even if it was dark. And then you'd do your homework, right? I see some head shaking. Y'all know this. And you go to bed. You get up the next day. You do the same thing. We did not have any crops of our own. We were too poor. We were sharecroppers, and so we would help anybody who had harvest, because they would give us hay, they would give us manure, they would give us crops, right? And so you would do this lifestyle, and it was fantastic. But it put into me this seed to serve, this seed to help others, because that's just what you do. It's a community. No man left behind. So when Dad said, Deb, you got to be an officer, I went and I visited my guidance counselor. She's still a good friend of mine to this very day. Her name's Leighton Manis. And I said, Miss Manis, Dad's telling me I got to be an officer. I don't know what that means. She said, oh, honey, she said, there's 2 ways you can do that. One is go through ROTC. She said, but you got to get into a school for that. You got to have good grades. She said, or you can go to one of those academies. I said, what's that? She said, well, you got to go to school. You graduate after 4 years. You got to give 5 years of your life, and that's it. I said, that's it? She said, but honey, put that out of your mind. She said, nobody from this county has ever done that. Well. I don't know about you all, but as soon as somebody says, nobody's ever done that, come on now. I said, fine. That's what I'll do. I picked up the top book off the stack of her little books because there was no internet, right? The top book just happened to be Annapolis, the United States Naval Academy. Had it been any other book, I'd have been in a different service. I filled out all the paperwork. My junior year, way early. And normally you have to get your appointment and your nomination, right? I get my nomination by the end of my junior year. And they said, tell you what, Deb, if you can get in, you got to get an appointment. We'll let you come to the United States Naval Academy. So some time passes. It's fall again. It's basketball season. It's harvest. And I said, Dad, we got to go get an appointment. He said, all right, how do we do that? I don't know. I said, apparently there's some guys down in Richmond, that big old mean city where people murder everybody. And I said, we got to drive to Richmond, Daddy, and I got to go see a congressman, and I got to get him to let me in. He said, all right. He said, I have next Wednesday and Thursday off. He said, let's do it then. True story. We load ourselves into the station wagon. Y'all know the one, the Chevy green wood paneling, sweet ride. I jump in there. I have my sister's Easter shoes on. True story. She teases me to this day. And we ride to Richmond, and we pull up to the building, and my dad doesn't even know how to use a parking deck. We didn't understand how you park in cities. He said, Debbie, get out. I'm like 16 or 17 years old. He said, I'll just circle until you come back. In the station wagon, mind you. So I said, all right, I got this. I was the youngest of a lot of kids. So I go up to the office and I knock on the door, and there's this real sweet lady at this big old oak desk, and she said, who are you and how can I help? I said, well, my name's Debbie Miller at the time, and I said, I'm here to see Congressman Goodlatte. Still a congressman in Virginia today. He's been there a long time. And she said, okay, you have an appointment? I said, no, ma'am. She said, oh, honey, here's how the process works. On these Saturdays of this month, you come down, and here's your appointment. I said, no. I'm from the west side of the state. It's harvest season. My daddy only has 2 days off. They're now. And I can't go home without seeing him. So I need to see him respectfully. So I'm just going to sit here. And could you just tell him I just need 5 minutes? 16 years old. She said, all right. So I sat there a good long while. I have no idea how many times my daddy circled that block. He's still going. Finally, she came and got me, and she said, Miss Debbie, Congressman said he'll see you. I said, that's awesome. Thank you. And I get up and I go in, and I'm rarely nervous in front of anybody. And I walked in, and his desk was like mahogany. It was huge. It was felt like half the size of this room, and he's way on the other side of it. And I didn't even know what standing at attention was yet. But trust me, I was standing at a time. I was, oh, Lord, what's happening? And he said, hey, I hear you want to go to the Naval Academy. I said, yes, sir. I said, I already have my nomination. I just need my appointment. And he said, Debbie, why should I send you? One simple question. He said, why should I send you? I've got a ton of other applicants. I've got a process. They're going to come in here over the next few Saturdays. They're going to want to do what you want to do. Why you? And ladies and gentlemen, something came over me, and to this day, I say it all the time. I don't know what, these were not my own words, but out of my mouth came the phrase, because, sir, if you give me that appointment, together, we will not fail. I said, I'm a sure thing. I will get through. I need your help. And together, we will not fail. Will you say that with me? We will not fail. Once more, we will not fail. That's who I am to my core. That's who we are. collectively as a group of veterans, we don't fail each other. We don't leave anybody behind. We need help and we know it, and we know when to ask. Would you know on January 7th, I got my appointment letter from Mr. Goodlatte. On January 8th, I signed the papers. I was the first from my county to attend the States Naval Academy. I got yelled at. I yelled at others. I showed up to Annapolis not knowing it was an engineering school. A little minor mistake on my part. I didn't know the difference between officer and enlisted. Luckily, the gentleman standing right beside me was enlisted in the United States Marine Corps, named Rodney Walker, and he said, "Debbie, I'll help you out." I said, "Oh, good, yeah." We got caught talking. I spent the rest of the day on my face. So I got the muscles in my hair. I got in lots of trouble. I jumped out of airplanes. I went overseas. I got to do, submarines. Women, we were allowed at that point in time to spend 23 hours and 59 minutes on a submarine, because that 1 minute mattered. So we did that. That's my parents and I on Parents' Weekend, plebe year. It was about a week in, and it was sunset, and we're out on the drill field with the DIs. And for the Marines in the house, you know what I mean. Those Smokies at sunset, that was it. I was going to be a Marine. And they said, "Debbie, but you're a girl." I said, "Well, we'll get to that." The plumbing I have is the plumbing I have, but we're going to do this because we do not fail, right? So I graduated, United States Marine, went to Quantico. I'll fast forward in my story. And I had a flight contract because it was neat. It was the first group of women to go to Pensacola. We were going to fly airplanes, and I got to TBS, and my roommate said, "Gosh, that's crazy. You've got another 2 years of school to go." And that started sinking in. And she said, "I was aviation supply enlisted, and let me tell you, you do great things, and you're still with Air Wing and so on and so forth." I went to my platoon commander, and I said, "Sir, I want to switch." He said, "What?" I said, "I want to become aviation maintenance, aviation supply." By the time I graduated, I was. A year after I graduated from TBS, I was aboard this LHA here, the USS Saipan. If there's any other panners out there, that was my first ship. I had command of 250 men. There was 6 women aboard the ship. We were the first Marines to ever deploy with a military expeditionary unit. There was 2 Marines. You can see us there. I'm the tall one. Ironically, we were both named Debbie. There was the nice one and the mean one. I was not the nice one. But when I got aboard this ship, the pilots weren't real crazy about having me there. And I am not blaming them. I get it. It was something different. They were just not simply used to us, and they're a little bit afraid of what this would do to the unit and the camaraderie. And I get that. Well, each of them threw $20 in a hat, and back in that day, there was 42 pilots if you count our CO, and that's a lot of money. And this was mid-90s, and they said the last pilot to speak to us, one of us, the last man standing, would get all the money to go party in the first port. Because they didn't want us there. They could live without us. No women. Well, their plan was going great until they remembered what I did for a living. Did I mention I was aviation maintenance, aviation supply? I decided which airplanes got fixed and when. I had 250 guys that worked for me who worked on the deck every night. And the pad eyes and the way they're laid out, the officer's berthing right is right under the deck. And at night, my Sergeant Sharon, he actually retired here into Atlanta, he found out where all the pilots' rooms were and mapped out the nastiest ones first. And a bunch of Marines with chains in their hands and crew rest and every hour on the hour. So some of those lovely gentlemen didn't get a lot of sleep, and that's probably dangerous. I know, you pilots, I apologize. But the other thing they didn't realize is as aviation supply, if they ripped a flight suit or broke a helmet or wanted their airplane to fly the next day, that wasn't going to work out so well if they didn't talk to me. The other thing that was interesting is my Marines, my staff NCOs mostly, said, "Man, it would be really cool if you learned to be a door gunner." We had 46s, 53s, Hueys, Cobras, Harriers aboard that ship. And they said, 46s, man, you could put on some pantyhose, a helmet, full face, pull the shield, body armor. They'd never know you're a girl. I was like, well, that's intriguing. My first 17 missions as a door gunner was in Bosnia, Herzegovina, Croatia, the former Yugoslavia, hunting body mounds. My next 6 were in Somalia. I did this in about 95 to 6. My record book would tell you I did it in 99 because I wasn't allowed to do it in 96. So check my record, it's not exactly accurate. But after flying a lot of missions, one thing happened. At the time I had real long hair, and I bent over to let a couple of the Marines, they were fast roping out of the hellhole, and I bent over and my hair accidentally flipped out of the bottom of my helmet. I thought for sure that was going to be the end of my military career because I was doing a lot of stuff I wasn't allowed to do. And not one of them said a single word. But I knew they had told the pilots, and later that day I got called into the ready room, and I thought, oof, this is a really dumb way to end my career. After all that work to get into the academy and all this work to figure out how to do my job. And I got called into the ready room, and as I was walking to the ready room, the other Debbie joined me. I thought, wow, both Debbies are getting called to the ready room at the same time. This is going to be bad. And I walked in, and all 42 pilots, including my CO, was sitting there. And the most salty of them all, matter of fact, his call sign was salty, stood up, a Huey pilot, ringleader, social ringleader. And he said, Debbies? They always think, the Debbies? I said, Debbies, we're a bunch of jerks. And we want to tell you something. You're tough. And we get it. You will not fail. We have failed you, and we're sorry. We want to welcome you into the fold and tell you that you got 42 brothers and that we have 2 sisters. And we'll take this money, and we're going to give it to you, and we're going to take you out in our first port. And we just want you to know I'm sorry. We're all sorry. So the bottom left of that screen is Palma de Mallorca. That was the first port we hit on that deployment. And I am told I had a great time in that town. Thank God for 42 brothers, because I made it back to the ship as far as I know. And in that scenario, my point is, we will not fail. Together. I took care of them. My staff NCOs, my NCOs, they took care of me. The seed to serve grew. And what I'd also tell you is that by the end of that deployment, those 42 brothers, the Marine Corps is a real small place, and it spread. I still am in touch with many, many of them today. They introduced me to many folks. It just grew. The brotherhood is real, and we owe it to each other to serve each other and to help each other not fail. So I served about 10 years on active duty, and then I met a guy, right, the husband that I was discussing about earlier, and he had 2 children. We accidentally had 2 more. It just happens. And so mom of 4, terrific husband. He had gotten out of the Army. He was serving overseas, overseas consulting, and lifestyle was tough as an active duty member. So I went into the reserves, and as a reservist, I found a marvelous company who has taken really, really good care of me for the last 17 years. Don't do the math. So 17 years with Home Depot. I started out as an operations manager for them in our stores. I ran a store as a store manager. It was wonderful. It was my favorite job I've ever had with Home Depot. It was the Myrtle Beach, South Carolina store. If you know 501, that is not an awful place to work. It was great. I got promoted into district manager as a DM up in Boston, running the financial district. Not fun. During the Nardelli era, we can talk about that at a different meeting. And then I came down to DC and was a district manager in DC. At that point in time, they called me down to the home office here, and that's when I went into learning. And one day a gentleman marched into my office and said, Debbie, I have a great idea. You ought to go into HR. Wait a minute, I'm an operator. I'm a Marine. This makes no, you want me in HR. I will get myself fired in exactly 3 days. Like, no. And he said, no, I really think it's good. He said, because you have an attitude of not letting others fail. You live our values, right? So we need that. And I would tell you the company values that we have and the work that I can do for veterans and the work that I can do for our associates across this great country, it feels like I'm still serving our young Marines. The people who apply and work inside of our stores, they need a break, they need to learn, they need a paycheck, they need work ethic. We teach them the business. It's incredible. But it was interesting because inside myself, that seed to serve, even though I take part in a ton of our Team Depot activities, I speak to as many transitioning military members as I can, it wasn't quite fulfilling my seed to serve. And that's when our foundation came to me and said, I want you to meet somebody. I said, okay. I had been working with the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation. I had been doing a few other little odds and ends here and there to continue to work with veterans. But they said, you got to meet this guy named Franz Fortune. I said, all right, I'll go downtown. And he has his organization on the west side, for those who know the area. It's about a mile and a half from the stadium, the new stadium. They said, just go spend an hour with him. Okay, all right, I'll go spend an hour with Franz. And there he's right here in front. I was going to say he's up on the screen. He's actually sitting right there. And so I went and I talked to this gentleman, and it intended to be an hour. And I think it was about 6 hours later, wasn't it? Oh, my goodness. We spent about 6 hours together. And I'll tell you a little bit about Franz, just to embarrass him, because I've got the mic right now and he doesn't. But he's a Haitian immigrant, came to this country to finish school, wanted to, just more than anything in the world, to serve in our military. He was so thankful for what this country gave him and his brother and his family that he wanted to serve. Now, I tease him to this day that his English is still awful, but he took that ASVAB and he failed the English part. So he wasn't allowed to serve. His brother passed. His brother had an amazing career in the Army. But Franz didn't sit still. His seed to serve. He will not fail. He went into commercial real estate. He moved here to Atlanta because of his beautiful bride. He was driving down the road and saw two young homeless gentlemen under a bridge. And he stopped to talk to them and said, what are you doing? He found out they were just transitioning out of the military and said, that's impossible. This country takes care of their veterans. Turns out they came home from serving in the War on Terror. They transitioned out. Life took a few bad turns for them, and sure enough, they were homeless. He drove them himself over to the Home Depot. This is where our stories start to intersect. And asked the store manager, can you give these guys a job? Store manager did. Franz went back a while later to check on them, and store manager said, you know what, these two young men are amazing. Great work ethic, do exactly what I ask them to do, love helping customers. But you know, there's one problem. They come to work every day in the same clothes. They don't smell real good. Do you know anything more about these gentlemen? And Franz said, I think they're homeless. They're sleeping under the bridge. He said, I got this. He took these two young men home to his house and let them live in his basement. Of course, after a while, his wife said, two young, strapping, good-looking men. They had a daughter. Said, no, out they go. Then he went and with his own money purchased a home that could house 6 more veterans, so 8 total. And so began this organization we now call VEO, the Veteran Organization. We help the homeless veterans of Atlanta get back on their feet. People say, Debbie, how does this work? Needless to say, I got involved, and it wasn't long before I became a member of the board. By the way, if you're on the board, make sure you make every meeting. I missed one meeting for a medical issue, and next thing I know, I was voted on as an officer of the board, vice chairman. And then my chairman, for personal reasons, had to step away from the board. And of course, I've been chairman of the board for the last 2 years by pure accident. So, that said, when someone becomes homeless, every scar has a story. Can I get an amen? People don't choose to be homeless. They make bad choices that end up putting them in a homeless situation. These young men and women that we take on, they served our country just like you and I. They've gotten themselves into a bad way. If you've ever been educated on what I call the homeless hustle and the shelters, especially the ones downtown, there's a couple things that I would tell you about the government system. One, no one has papers. If you need to get services from the VA, if you need a mental assessment, if you need a medical assessment, if you need to get in touch with family, the first thing you need is a DD-214. The easiest way to get mugged in a homeless shelter is to have any form of identification on you. They don't. When these homeless men and women come to our administrative costs for the organization, which is always an interesting thing for a nonprofit, we hover between 13 and 14.5%. So it's quite low. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How many people do you need to staff the kitchen for say, an evening?
Great question. It depends on how you bring the food. The question was, how many people does it take to staff the kitchen for an evening meal? So if you bring your food with you, it's only as many as you need to serve it. If you're cooking, we got grills there. We got grills. That was the almost West Virginia coming out. We got you some grills. And so it really depends on prep for the food. Tyler can help coordinate, but we usually say between 7 to 10 people can serve. And then if you need more prep people, then maybe twice that.
Sorry, let me say that. Usually it's the best way. All of you guys can go there and serve. Because I've seen a group of 200 kids or
That's right.
church who come. It's not about the serving the food. It's about spending time.
That's right.
With those guys. So,
and they love it.
Yeah, so if we serve about 100, because some of them has jobs, they go about buy their own food. But for those who come, it's about 100. If you say you want to serve pizza, want everybody to have 2 slices of pizza, so you'll know what your budget would be.
Yeah.
So, but the biggest thing is
side by
some
side.
of those guys who haven't seen family for a long time, or they just love to spend time with the outsiders.
And I would tell you, not only that, my kids, they joke, I have a 22-year-old, she's in college, and when I go onto the campus, probably 15 veterans come find me, and they're like, how's my sister? How's my sister? I feel very safe on that campus. Some of these gentlemen come to you with a background that might make you shudder when you first read the rap sheet, but I'm telling you, they want to be a great citizen again. They've served our country, and I trust my children. I have a 11-year-old daughter. They sit amongst them. We play music. We laugh. We play cards. We play cornhole. They genuinely, the veterans love to talk to other veterans especially, but they bring your whole families. Other questions?
Do you have a card to hand out to a person on the street that's holding one of those little cardboard signs that says if he's a veteran, and to hand them a card that would lead to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have them.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
have pamphlets. I mean,
We don't have them.
That's right. I was going to say, we have them, but we need to get you them. We can walk around the streets and, hand them out.
But basically, that's the thing that we do every month, especially if it's depending how many beds we have open. We'll go like 5 o'clock in the morning and go under the bridges or anywhere we think there may be homeless veteran, because a lot of them sometimes they've been going to the VA. The only thing, the VA is a process. It's a government. It's not the VA that doesn't want to help, but you have to go to a process. And unfortunately, some of them can't make that process, especially when you're dealing with PTSD, mental issue. You don't remember when your appointment is. And at the VA, you lose your appointment, you got to start all over again. And for us with VEO, by not being a government funding program, so we welcome you. And that's how you can start that process. So if you're welcome to come in, whenever we're having an outreach, you're welcome to come. It's first-hand experience to say, a veteran, hey, we welcome you. That, oh, I've been going to the VA forever, and nothing been done. When you say, come in, oh, you guys are the VA, I don't want to deal with you guys. But to let them understand, we part of the VA, but we're different, and give them an opportunity. It's an awesome experience. So hopefully when you go to VEO, you can get some pamphlets.
I'll make sure, and I'll get you guys some. And what's interesting too, what Franz mentioned is, he means it when he says that's how he started. He went and looked under the bridges in the middle of the night and said, are there any veterans here? And that's how he brought them home to our very first house. Yes, sir, in the back.
I mean, you have financial giving.
Yes,
You also have donations, for example. And will you accept suits?
That is a great question. The question was, do we take donations? We do. And what's interesting is right now with our building down, when the new building is up, we will be back to accepting all kinds of donations. Touch base with the organization, because the one thing we do love to get is professional attire, so suits, ladies and men. Right now our storage ability is very limited. When the new building is finished, it will have 10,000 square feet for us, and part of that will be that storage locker. When our homeless vets come to us, they actually get rid of everything they own, bed bugs, lice, there's all kinds of issues. Through the intake process, they can go into the locker and pick out usually 3, full sets of clothing. Again, it's very militarist. When you go in and look at their closets, they're not allowed to have a lot of clothes. But we do need those kind of donations. It is on a pause as of now. The only exception is cleaning supplies. Cleaning supplies and paper products we always need. And everything that gets donated obviously saves us money. That money goes into the services for the vet rather than us buying 409. So absolutely, we do take donations.
You may remember we had a drive here about a couple of years ago and filled a very large truck with very nice suits and other men's clothing. It was very successful, but they had a place to put it then.
Yeah,
Right
that's
now
true. We're just in a pause. Hopefully by next spring we'll be back going. All right, so last but not least, I can tell the hook when I'm getting it. I would just leave this. One, thank you so much for having me. The attitude of we will not fail, I would ask you to consider, if you do come down and do a tour of VEO, you will see we will not fail these veterans. We will not fail each other. I have made such great friends from the residents, from the people that work at the organization. They are absolutely tremendous. They are just like you and I. They just need a chance to get back on their feet. And let's continue to serve each other. Thank you. Thank you. I didn't believe it when I was told. When I went down and saw it, everything changed. Secondly, awareness. Tell everybody you can tell. Tell every veteran you meet. Every church organization. And that's not because of us. That's because there's veterans out there that are homeless or about to be homeless, and they need us, and we need them to know about us. We have many folks that walk up to our door and say, I'm about to be homeless. We have veterans come to our door that have an incredible amount of money in the bank. We don't care. A lot of the homeless shelters or the institutions that help the homeless will not help you if you have family, if you have money. We don't care. If you're a veteran, we're going to help. We just want the veterans in Atlanta to know this is there for them. Any age, any veteran status, we got your back. Next, we have a grand gala, right? Every organization does. It's lots of fun. Last year, Angie and Arthur Blank were our sponsors. We believe Dan Cathy's attending this year. We've got lots of great support from the businesses of Atlanta. I'm sure Home Depot will be there in spades, but really, really nice event. It's at the Atlanta Aquarium. You get to dance with the fishes. Really good time, and of course, we just let our hair down there. The kitchen's being rebuilt, and I know you can't see that, so as I showed the shovels and the groundbreaking, the one interesting thing that did is that means we don't have a kitchen through the winter right now. So we have a tent set up, a heated tent, and every day from now, we hope until about June, we are having different organizations, churches, individual families, companies, small companies come and fix meals. That's how we're feeding our veterans, and there's a calendar online. Tyler, one of our former residents who now is an associate at the VEO, he is coordinating all this, but it's amazing. Over the last 2 months, we haven't missed a beat. We have lots of people showing up and helping us fix meals for these veterans. We have about 100 veterans every day that we feed. We have 20-ish transitional beds that are always full. Those are the intake folks. We have about 75 to 80 who are kind of in step 2, if you will, of the program. And then all area veterans who are in need can come and get services from our organization. You don't have to be a resident. So we have a lot of folks who come to get their meals and attend classes. And then lastly, right, it goes without saying, financial giving. The model of being a privatized charity, it is new, it is different, it is against the grain. We love and are very blessed to have had a very long-term partnership with United Way. But if I'm being perfectly honest, our goal is to even raise enough unrestricted funds to not even take one United Way dollar. We love them, and we want them to be able to serve many, many nonprofit organizations. But for us, that limits us in some ways. There's regulation that goes with any federal dollar that you take. So if we can get to a truly, fully privatized charity, we believe then that we are replicatable, and we believe that once we get to that point, we can put a VEO in Norfolk. We can put a VEO in San Diego. We can put a VEO in the middle of this country near every Army base that exists. we believe VEO is a model that could work anywhere if we can get to a privatized model. We have about 30 to 40 staff members at any given time. The heavy load is on services, on caseworkers. Franz, of course, has an executive team, and we have a development group. So like all nonprofits, we're split into services and development. But we do have a whole pile of volunteers. It's how I probably met John the first time. And we're trying to get better at coordinating volunteers. But, we probably say our administrative costs for the organization, which is always an interesting thing for a nonprofit, we hover between 13 and 14.5%. So it's quite low. The question was, how many people does it take to staff the kitchen for an evening meal? So if you bring your food with you, it's only as many as you need to serve it. If you're cooking, we got grills there. We got grills. That was the almost West Virginia coming out. We got you some grills. And so it really depends on prep for the food. Tyler can help coordinate. But we usually say between 7 to 10 people can serve. And then if you need more prep people, then maybe twice that.
Let me say that. Usually it's the best way. All of you guys can go there and serve. Because I've seen a group of 200 kids or
That's right.
church who come. It's not about the serving the food. It's about spending time
That's right.
with those guys. So,
And they love it.
yeah, so if we serve about 100, because some of them has jobs, they go about buy their own food. But for those who come, it's about 100. If you say you want to serve pizza, want everybody to have 2 slices of pizza, so you'll know what your budget would be.
Yeah.
So, but the biggest thing is,
Side
you
by
have some
side.
of those guys who haven't seen family for a long time, or they just love to spend time with the outsiders.
Other questions?
Do you have a card to hand out to a person on the street that's holding one of those little cardboard signs that says if he's a veteran, and to hand them a card that would lead to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have them.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
have pamphlets. I mean,
We don't have them.
That's right. I was going to say,
Right.
we have them, but we need to get you them. We can walk around the streets and, hand them
yeah,
out.
But basically, there's a thing that we do every month, especially if it's depending how many beds we have open. We'll go like 5 o'clock in the morning and go under the bridges or anywhere we think there may be homeless veteran. Because a lot of them sometimes, they've been going to the VA. The only thing, the VA is a process. It's a government, it's not the VA that doesn't want to help, but you have to go to a process. And unfortunately, some of them can't make that process, especially when you're dealing with PTSD, mental issue. You don't remember when your appointment is. And at the VA, you lose your appointment, you got to start all over again. And for us with VEO, by not being a government funding program, so we welcome you. And that's how
That's
you
right.
can start that process. So
It's,
if you're
yep.
welcome to come in, whenever we're having an outreach, you're welcome to come. It's first an experience to say, a veteran, hey, we welcome you. That, oh, I've been going to the VA forever, and nothing been done. When you say come in, oh, you guys are the VA, I don't want to deal with you guys. But to let them understand, we part of the VA, but we're different, and give them an opportunity. It's an awesome experience. So hopefully when you go to VEO, you can get some pamphlets.
I'll make sure, and I'll get you guys some. And what's interesting too, what Franz mentioned is, he means it when he says that's how he started. He went and looked under the bridges in the middle of the night and said, are there any veterans here? And that's how he brought them home to our very first house. Yes, sir, in the back.
But you have financial giving.
Yes,
You
sir.
also have donations, for example. And will you accept suits or ties?
That is a great question. The question was, do we take donations? We do. And what's interesting is right now with our building down, when the new building is up, we will be back to accepting all kinds of donations. Touch base with the organization, because the one thing we do love to get is professional attire, so suits, ladies and men. Right now, our storage ability is very limited. When the new building is finished, it will have 10,000 square feet for us, and part of that will be that storage locker. When our homeless vets come to us, they actually get rid of everything they own, bed bugs, lice, there's all kinds of issues. Through the intake process, they can go into the locker and pick out usually three full sets of clothing. Again, it's very militarist. When you go in and look at their closets, they're not allowed to have a lot of clothes. But we do need those kind of donations. It is on a pause as of now. The only exception is cleaning supplies. Cleaning supplies and paper products, we always need. And everything that gets donated obviously saves us money. That money goes into the services for the vet rather than us buying 409. So absolutely, we do take donations.
You may remember we had a drive here about a couple of years ago and filled a very large truck with very nice suits and other men's clothing. It was very successful, but they had a place to put it then.
Yeah,
Right now
that's true. We're just in a pause. Hopefully by next spring, we'll be back going. All right, so last but not least, I can tell the hook when I'm getting it. I would just leave this. One, thank you so much for having me. The attitude of we will not fail, I would ask you to consider, if you do come down and do a tour of VEO, you will see we will not fail these veterans. We will not fail each other. I have made such great friends from the residents, from the people that work at the organization. They are absolutely tremendous. They are just like you and I. They just need a chance to get back on their feet. And let's continue to serve each other. Thank you.